RJ, you can't win them all. And the Kraken did not win this one. The second night of a back-to-back, go into Dallas, and you lose 2-0. Now, I think there was actually some positives to this game that we can talk about, but it is a little bit unfortunate after the high we were all kind of riding yesterday, kind of run into a wall here.
Right. And it wasn't all bad, as you mentioned, but I think in reality, right, you run into a team that is a better team. And this is the first time the Kraken have played a playoff team from last season this year, and it looked like it. The Stars also had a weekend back-to-back. They got a shutout in the first half of it as well. They get a shutout in the second half. I mean, they are already in mid-season form, that's for sure.
Yeah, Dallas is absolutely rolling right now, which, in some ways it makes the effort. If you take 13 seconds out of this game, Kraken play them pretty good, actually, right? Like, I'm looking at the expected goals numbers. It's not, those late breakaways is kind of what helps pull Dallas away from the Kraken in this one. But for the most part, I felt like the Kraken actually did a pretty decent job of hanging in there with a team that they are just not as good as. And
even late into the third, I mean, those expected goals numbers about 2-2, and it kind of felt that way over the course of this game. Low event, low scoring, low opportunity, and it just felt like that 13 seconds was the difference.
Exactly. And we'll get into the 13 seconds and
yes,
what kind of went on and all that in just a little bit. Want to start off going over to chat right now, and got a couple super chats here. Thank you very much. Sean, the first one here, after seeing the Stars in person Thursday and then going through the motions tonight to do this, they are just cruising on to Nashville. There was a little bit of an element of that with Dallas, I felt like, right? Like, Dallas felt like they were pacing themselves. I don't know that they were necessarily cruising. I think they did have to work hard against this Kraken team, but they do a really good job of pacing themselves and playing a full 60, which you could argue the Kraken maybe didn't.
Yeah, and you can tell what their priority is too. It's making sure they don't give up anything grade A defensively. I thought they did a great job in their own zone, especially defending, right? Mm-hmm. Letting the Kraken have a lot of offensive zone time, but not really getting to the middle very often. And the first game this weekend for them shows too. They've got that down. And also they knew what their plan was in as far as creating offense too. As Edzo pointed out earlier in the broadcast, right? It's throwing those pucks up out of the defensive zone into the neutral zone quickly, just throwing them to areas because they know the wingers are going to get into that spot. And I thought the Kraken did a good job defending that in the first period, but they tried it again. And ultimately they were able to break through with it.
Yes. And it's kind of been interesting to watch. I feel like we've, obviously the playoff series, we played against them 2 years ago and everything. It feels like we kind of know this Dallas team a little bit better than some other teams that are certainly outside of the division. And that's kind of like an interesting new evolution for what they do with how they tend to play with their wingers, right? We've seen them play with wingers down low in the defensive zone, and the way that they've defended the Kraken in the past that way. This time, a little bit different, right? Like, just have the wingers play up high, have your defense just kind of check it out there, kind of board and out, and let the wingers go to work. It's kind of interesting to see how they've changed over the last couple of seasons, just based on the games that we've seen as the Kraken have played against them. Other super chat here from Kraken fan: need a full 60. This late start isn't going to cut it. I am looking here on Money Puck RJ at the expected goals for the Kraken, and yes, you don't really start seeing a big bump from them until, what is this, around the I don't know, like 8-minute mark.
Yeah, thereabouts. Although here's where I disagree with, I think, a lot of what I saw, whether it was online or even in the broadcast, right? And I tell me if you agree with me or not here. But looking at the first period, because at the first intermission, a lot of the analysis, whether it was on the broadcast or on Twitter or anywhere that I saw it, was that it was a bad first period for the Kraken. They didn't play very well. And I think you take that 13-second stretch, absolutely, we can dissect all the problems with that. But I thought otherwise. Look, they didn't really generate anything offensively in the first. No one's debating that. But I thought they did okay overall. I thought it was a good road period up until that point where they didn't generate anything, but the Stars didn't either. And it felt like, I don't know, I felt like I was seeing the blueprint for what this game was supposed to be and the way that you're supposed to beat a superior team in Dallas, which is they wanted to come into it, make sure that neither team had anything super dangerous, and then just take advantage of those couple opportunities, whether it was a power play, a bounce, whatever, later in the game. And it felt like, aside from that stretch, right? That 13 seconds and the two big mistakes, that was the game plan. They almost worked it pretty well. All it takes is one bounce late if you were within one goal. So I don't know. I feel like the start might have been, obviously you want to generate more, but I don't think it was all that far off from what they were hoping to do.
No, I'm actually with you, especially because you're talking about a road period, second night of back to back. You're playing a team that is, a Stanley Cup favorite, right? Certainly one of the top four-ish teams in the NHL. Having it come out there, and if you take that 13 seconds out, it's a pretty boring period of hockey for both squads. And I feel like that's a win if you're the underdog. Right. And that is what the Kraken were able to make that game. We could go ahead and start getting into the 13 seconds, though, just to kind of talk about this. And yes, you should be able to play that way, keep it low event, but also still generate chances for yourself, which the Kraken really didn't do. But, it's baby steps. We're 3 games into the season kind of thing. But that 13-second stretch, RJ, because ultimately that is the only scoring that happens in this game for either team, comes in that stretch. The first goal, right? Will Borgen not really able to clear the puck out of the zone. Then also doesn't really take away the player, net front, net side, whatever you want to call it. In front, Dallas is able to make that cross crease pass and then bang one home. It was kind of like 2 rough plays back to back there. And it's one of those where, look, these are the times where in the NHL, especially when you're playing a really good team like Dallas, but really any night in the NHL, if you kind of make 2 mistakes back to back like that, you're going to get burned.
Right. And it was a rough sequence from Will Borgen on that one. And it's going to happen sometimes when you play against a good team like Dallas. And I don't think Dallas did a ton to force that, right? The play was open. It just, Borgen kind of flubbed it, right?
Yeah.
It was just a failed breakout. And that's going to happen sometimes. You hope it doesn't end up in the back of your net, but sometimes it does. And that's the kind of thing you almost have to account for happening maybe once in a hockey game. And that's not the one that bugs me as much as the second one, but still it's just unforced.
Right. I know the other one bugs you. The reason this one bugs me is because it's yet another issue with net front defense where you just have a defenseman who isn't even facing the right direction. Right? Like this is what happened on, I think, the first Minnesota goal yesterday. I think it was the first one, right? Where you have the entire team watching and facing the wrong direction, right? They're all facing and basically looking at their goaltender instead of looking at players who could come in, like Matt Zuccarello ends up doing, right? And this one, Borgen has his back right to the player who ultimately ends up scoring. You don't need to do that, right? You're defending. That guy is there. Your goalie is squared up to the post on the other side of the net. That is the backdoor play. That's really the only play Dallas has there. You got to at least be facing the right direction so you can take away his stick. You can body him up. You could try to box him out. You could be doing something so that you can take him out of the play because he is the only thing that is a danger to you in that moment.
Yes, although, and maybe I'm a little too willing to excuse it a bit just because it's a D pair that's never played a game before, and he's out there with Mahura. And if you look at it, rewind it a little bit too, Borgen goes over to one of the 2 stars net front, tries to body him up, then sees that Mahura is coming back to take the guy. He's like, all right, well, I'll go back here. And then by that time, the pass is already across. I almost chalk that up a little bit to look the turnover from Borgen at the start. That's mistake number 1. That's not excusable. But the second one just feels like a miscommunication more than anything.
The reason I'm bringing it up is because it's like another example of the Kraken having issues in that area, right? Like I'm not trying.
It's one of many they've had this
right.
Weekend,
I'm not trying to necessarily just pin it all on Borgen and really single him out, and that's why I was kind of comparing it to the game yesterday because Borgen was not on the ice for that issue yesterday. But it's just like this is something where we are seeing this in all 3 games so far this season. The Kraken have an issue here, and it's something that, look, they didn't have the issue the rest of this game, so that's improvement. But the one time it did result in a goal against. The other one, I know that you have a much bigger issue with the second one. Saw your tweet and all that kind of stuff. Go ahead, go for it, RJ. I'll cede the floor.
Yeah, maybe I was engaging a little bit too much on social media there. I just saw some pushback and felt the need to elaborate a little bit. So the second goal comes 13 seconds after the first one. And this is the one also where the Stars effectively break the puck up, out of their own zone through the neutral
Yeah.
zone, just kind of putting the puck to an area. And so it generates a rush that way. Kraken pretty focused, pretty good defending that all game, but this is one where they lose focus on that a little bit, which it's tough after allowing a goal. And so then it generates a rush. And you have Riker Evans. I'll start with how it's defended. You have Riker Evans kind of Jamie Benn tries to, force his way to the middle. Evans goes and tries to make some contact with Jamie Benn, but then leaves Wyatt Johnston a lot of time and space to walk in. Johnston shoots it from almost exactly the faceoff dot on the left side and snipes one past Philip Grubauer. Look, Evans could have played that one better. He certainly could have. He played the wrong man, and it gave Wyatt Johnston some time and space to step up and have a good shot. That said, from that spot, that's still a low percentage shot. And it's one that in that situation in a game where you've just been scored on 13 seconds prior, and well, you need your goalie to make that save. I'll start by saying that. You just do. You simply need your goalie to make that save in that situation in a game. We talked about it after the St. Louis game. Heck, we talked about it after the last Minnesota game, right? I mean, the Kraken managed to get out of it, but it's really about when those key saves come. And that's one of those key moments where Grubauer needs to make that save. I think he needs to get out of the net a little bit and challenge it a little bit more. And I think if he does, he probably stops that shot. There were moments elsewhere in the game where he did square up just right to it and stop that shot. In this case, he doesn't. The Stars go up 2-0. And I think it has extra importance too, because of the whole strategy that I talked about earlier, where I felt like the blueprint, right, was to keep things close, to keep it a close, low event game, stay within a goal and hope you get your bounce, hope you get your power play, hope you can convert somewhere because this is a better team. At that point, I think the Stars realistically pulled away and got out of reach, even though there was still plenty of game left. You need twice as many bounces, things to go right, things to go your way. It just felt like such a pivotal moment in the game for me.
Yes, it's the name of the game on the second goal was just they were too passive. Whether it's Riker Evans being a little too passive, he engages Jamie Benn, and then when he disengages Jamie Benn, like the shot still hasn't been taken, he just keeps backing up. And then also from Grubauer, just too passive and plays deep in his crease. Great example is the Kraken basically had two chances that looked extremely similar to that Wyatt Johnston goal in the third period. I think the first one was from Mahura. The second one was definitely from Matty Beniers. And you look at the way Casey DeSmith plays both of them, and he's up at either the top of his crease or even beyond the top of his crease, just to really challenge, take up as much space as he possibly can, cut down that angle, and Kraken aren't able to get past him. Right. Like it was just kind of like you had that example of why you have to play aggressive in those situations as a goalie later on in the game. I think if either of them play that more aggressive, that puck probably doesn't go in. There is an element of me, RJ, I'm not going to lie, that's just like, wow, that was like a really perfectly placed top corner shot. Like
It was a nice shot.
If even if Grubauer is a little bit more aggressive, I think that space might be there because that space kind of exists on every goaltender. Like there's an element of me that wants to just say, look, it was a good player making a good play. But if you are aggressive as a goaltender and you come out, he probably isn't looking at it at as much space. And maybe that gets in his head a little bit, right? It becomes that much harder for him to pick that corner. And that's still important. Even if the corner is still going to be there, it's going to look a lot smaller to him. And so I think, yes, the name of the game on that one was just both players were too passive and it kind of burned them there, which is something we've also talked about before, right? Like being a little bit too passive in the defensive zone and it resulting in some goals against. So it's clear like this is something that the team needs to work on. I've no doubt that they will. They now get a day off before they go into Nashville, and we'll see what they can do. Coop with the super chat. Can you all shed any light on why we dump and chase on the power play? I mean, there's an element that all teams do this on the power play. I will say this, watching this game versus the game yesterday, Dallas has a far more aggressive penalty kill. And they did a really good job of looked like probably watching what the Kraken were able to do yesterday on the power play and then saying, okay, let's sit in these lanes. Let's not give them clean zone entries. Let's take away a lot of the stuff that they were successful with last night. Let's just try to disrupt that and then see what their plan B is. And as we've talked about before, and we saw kind of like in the St. Louis game with the offense as a whole, the Kraken are still learning and getting used to building chemistry on plan A. There isn't really plan Bs for everything yet. And it felt like that was some of this was just Dallas played really aggressive at the blue line, kind of forced the Kraken into spots where they had to dump and chase entering the zone on the power play, because otherwise you were just going to run into somebody and lose the puck anyway.
Right. And I think a lot of a power play zone entry too can be dictated by what the defense does and you be reacting to it, because you can go into it with a plan to skate it in, get the blue line yourself. But if the PK team steps up and really guards that blue line solidly, all you're going to do is turn it over and they're going to have speed going the other way. You do have to have your head up and see what they're doing. Conversely, if you wanted to go dump it in and chase it and they're playing way back, it just doesn't make sense to do that because they're going to get the puck right away too. Felt like Dallas came prepared to stop one thing, and so the Kraken kind of tried the other.
Yes. Going back up in the chat here, Zoe with the pros and cons. Pro grew with the breakaways, and this is what I also wanted to add to when we talk about the second goal. This is the big dilemma with Philip Grubauer, right, RJ? It's he will make the big save, right? Makes the big save in the third period on Nick Leddy in that St. Louis game, makes two big breakaway saves at the end of this one, right? In the third period, keeps the Kraken in it, but then it tends to let one in he should probably have, right? Like he'll make a misplay or whatever and lets one in that he should probably have. And it makes judging him so difficult and analyzing him and kind of coming to some sort of conclusion. And if you're the Kraken coaching staff, probably feeling safe and secure starting him.
Right. The overall numbers, seem to look okay. For me, I'm kind of at the point where I just need to see the saves in the key moments because we've seen it enough times beforehand. And then in both of his starts this year, and I lump it in with the Broberg goal, right? Where you have St. Louis able to tie that game 2-2 on a play where, again, if he's out a little bit further, probably stops that puck. So that's kind of where I'm at with him. And I know, look, we've spent a lot of time, defending him. And I think when the defense breaks down, like we will talk about it, right? We're not just, I know there's a very vocal anti-Grubauer crowd that will kind of blame him for really any of the goals, right? And I don't think, I don't count myself as part of that. That said, this season, it really feels like there's going to be a lot of close games like this. One goal game. I mean, this was a 2-goal game, but the 1-goal games that they've had the last couple before this, and the timely saves, I think are going to be that much more important this year. And we just need to start seeing them.
Right. But I mean, are the breakaways not timely saves?
They are. And they
like,
give you a chance, but I mean, in this one, I might argue it's too late.
Well, yeah, it is in the sense that, I mean, hindsight would say that it is, right? But it's one where I just feel like, I don't know.
The first breakaway save, I guess I wouldn't say it's too late because I even tweeted about it. I said, look, it could have been, the game could have been over if Sagan scores that, but instead Kraken go to the power play, chance to get back within 9 minutes to go. You're still in that game.
Yeah, there was still a lot of time left on the clock in that situation, and you haven't had the ridiculous penalty that Montour took in quotes there.
That was a time.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. But yeah, I mean, like I feel like those two are big saves, and I do feel like Philip Grubauer tends to do that. It's just if this team, RJ, had a consistent power play, if it had one more above average difference maker on offense, I feel like Philip Grubauer makes enough saves that this team isn't killed each and every time he's out there by the one goal that he should have that he lets in. Right? It is because the offense is just on nights like tonight fairly non-existent, if not completely so, that one extra goal is just feels like a backbreaker. Right? This one, it felt like a backbreaker because the power play goes 0 for 4. You don't really generate a ton of offensive chances over long stretches in this one, right? You'll have like one good look every 5 to 8 minutes tonight. And so it just makes it feel kind of that much worse.
Yeah, and I understand that. Like, I think, normally, like letting a second goal in in a game, right, is not
Right.
it's not a big deal. Like once you get to two, it's just given the opponent, given what the blueprint was. That's all.
Yes. Let's see. Ricky Spanish, both teams on the second night of a back-to-back. Yes, and it kind of felt like both teams were, to be honest.
Mhm.
There was some of that. James, 0 total points from the top 3 centers through 3 games. Horrible, awful, pathetic. I don't know that I'd call it pathetic because I feel like we've seen some good things from all of them. RJ, like I thought again, Maddie today makes a great move when they were was he out there for with the net empty before the power play, or it was on the power play, but he makes that move where he tries to cut to the inside on the side and he gets that great shot off at point blank range on Casey DeSmith. Like I feel like Maddie is a better player than he was last season. Shane does a lot to generate a lot of stuff in the offensive zone, and you can tell he is the one player on this entire team, RJ, that you feel like defenses struggle to deal with, right? And I feel like you saw that tonight with Dallas. Is like there was times where they just struggled to deal with him, and then you're seeing those really good looks from like Jordan Eberle or Jared McCann on his line. It's because Shane's gone in there like a bowling ball and disrupted whatever the defense is trying to do, and he's opened up those 2 other guys to go and make plays. Chandler Stevenson, I talked yesterday about how he can kind of be a facilitator for offense. I get it. They need to start putting up points. Like that is something that needs to happen. But like it's this team, right? Like we know that none of them are point per game guys. Like that's just not really who they are. That's not their game. Their game is doing other things.
Right. And you have to know that going in. I'm glad you brought up the play with Matty Beniers where he drove the net. I love that from him. I want to
Yeah.
see more of that. The confidence to kind of do that inside out move and then back in. That's the kind of stuff we saw from him in his rookie year, where he was just feeling like he could do anything, like he could accomplish anything. We saw a little flash of it there. I would love to see more.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And so I think he's improving, right? Like he's getting there. There's still a lot that he needs to work on and continue to grow with, but I feel like he's getting there. Christian, both teams on a back-to-back, but only Kraken looked at maybe road back-to-backs take a different toll than home back-to-backs. I mean, was Dallas at home last night?
Yes, they
Yeah,
were. I
okay.
believe.
Yeah.
I believe they were, which
Yeah.
I mean would make sense travel wise. And it's a long flight too. It's not
It's
like you're
not an
just
easy flight.
going Rangers to Islanders or something. You're going all the way from Minnesota to Dallas and leaving as late as you do. It is grueling.
Yes. Bryce will always have yesterday. That is true. We will always have that game. And SJ, can we all agree that was a scheduled loss? In a lot of ways, just yes, because we had to play a team that's kind of significantly better. And
It doesn't.
especially on
Yeah,
the
it's
back.
as close as it gets. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I again, like I really do feel like the Kraken played this one as good as I could have hoped for or expected them to reasonably. Like I really do think that. And yes, I mean, you take away the second goal, the Wyatt Johnston goal, and it's a 1-goal game. The Kraken are in it. They generated some pretty good chances in the third, like just aren't able to get one home. The one thing I think you could say, RJ, and I want to be mostly positive about all of this, but this is something that I was thinking about watching the third period, as Casey DeSmith is on his way to a shutout. And I know he's playing behind a good Dallas team, but like these should be the moments where the Kraken are able to win as an underdog, because you do have 2 goaltenders, right? In theory, you have 2 $5 million+ goaltenders in your crease that Dan Bausma on any given night gets to put out there, versus teams that are going to have, in most cases, one definitive starter and then one backup. And tonight you get Dallas with their backup. It feels like those are the opportunities for the Kraken to make up ground, right? Win the games that you're supposed to win, do well against the teams that you're even with, try to collect points just like they did last night, and then try to pick off the good teams when you're facing their backup or they're dealing with an injury or something like that. And it feels like because the Kraken have those 2 goaltenders, they should, on most of those games like tonight, have the edge there. And then they didn't.
Right. And they should, in theory. I mean, this is part of my whole thing. I won't, belabor the point, but why I say maybe don't pay that big money for goalies, because you can get performances like that from a Casey DeSmith if you play a solid defensive game in front of him. And credit to DeSmith. I think he played really well. I think Kraken just could have done a little bit more to get to the inside, but it's tough on the second half of back-to-backs. I think also the point that, like Edzo pointed it out to in the third period, I think there was a play where the Kraken had the puck behind the net. They were cycling and trying to get it out front. They did get it out front. And he pointed out Burakovsky on the right wall wall. Do you remember that one? And he's just like, I
Yeah.
just wish he would just cut in, go to the hard areas, just go there. And it seemed like the Kraken didn't have a lot of their forwards, just didn't have, you could argue even just the energy to do it right on the second half of back-to-backs. That I think that played a role as well.
Yeah, the three or so players that I can think of that pretty consistently did it. Well, I'll give you four because well, Maddie did it once, which was a big deal because Maddie just didn't ever used to do it. So the one time I will take. But the three guys that I feel like kind of did that consistently: Shane Wright, Jordan Eberle, and Brandon Tanev, who I thought did a pretty good job of doing that. But you'd like it to be more than three guys for sure. Like that is what you need. Lindsay, even though you want the second goal back, can't blame this one on Gru after his two big breakaway stops. And oh yeah, the boys scored 0 goals to support him. Why do they always do this to Gru Power? The goal support
the
allegations
goal support is frustrating.
They will never go away, RJ. They just won't. Let's see. Byron, still wondering if there's a Seattle Sports "Why won't anyone score for me" support group. It's probably too full.
I know, with the whole Mariners pitching staff.
Yes,
like, is there any more room?
I just don't know. Let's see. Deserve to win meter had the Kraken at 50% rounded. Mason. Yeah, I mean, it was fairly even as far as expected goals go in for the most part and everything. Like the Kraken were able to kind of slow but steadily generate some of those chances, in large part because of those opportunities where you did have guys like Shane Wright, Jordan Eberle kind of getting to the inside there and getting some good looks.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was a close game, and ultimately these kind of games come down to either a bounce, a power play, or a mistake, or some combination of those three, and this was no exception.
Yes. Let's see. The both Striatic and Pablo pointed out the Oilers lost tonight 4-1 to drop to 0-3 on the season. So, it could be worse, everybody. We could be the Oilers.
I mean, hey, look at last year.
Yes.
It's the proven formula to get to the final.
It is. Let's see. Still didn't allow an empty netter in Welton. That is true. That was something that I did think about. The Kraken have done a good job of, in these situations, whether it was the first game against the Blues or the game tonight, they're not saying die, right? Like the whole thing that they had that mentality season 2. We talked about the lack of that mentality last year and how they didn't really kind of have that never give upness to them. It seems back this year. Right? Like they are battling late in games. They're trying to make it happen.
Yeah. And it's good to see that too. Cause like you never know when you're going to get an extra chance and the team won't play it as strongly. Like Dallas, right? They probably could have had an empty netter. Evgeny Dodonov carried the puck up the ice to the blue line, insisted on making the pass over to Logan Stankoven. Didn't work out, but there was like a minute and a half left at that point. And if you ever can get one of those to go too, that can be a killer for the other team, especially if you're down 2 goals, right? You turn around, you score on that one. I think it just feels vibes wise, right? Like it's a little more likely you might get the second one.
Yes. Now, also couple comments in here, and yes, we absolutely need to talk about this component of it, RJ. Whether it's HM, just like last year, no Dunn, no offense, or Jenna, I hate not having Dunn in the lineup. The energy sucks. Vince Dunn did miss this game, and I do wonder in a game that was close like this, RJ, does Vince Dunn make a difference in it?
No question. I think he absolutely would have made a difference in this game, not just defensively, but offensively. We talked about the first goal against where it was Borgen and Mahura together. That's not even a thing if Dunn is in the lineup. Borgen's with Evans, and I know they've had their issues, but potentially that goes a little bit smoother, right? And then, I mean, if you get shut out, right? Vince Dunn is one of your best, if not the best, maybe offensive weapon you have, realistically, for the Kraken. I have to think he makes a difference, especially on the power play too.
I think he helps on the power play for sure. Riker didn't look as hot there as I thought he would. I don't know what that was about.
Here's I think he's had kind of a slow start to the season. I mean, we saw it in the preseason where he struggled a little bit too, but now I think it's getting into the regular season a bit too. And even on the second Dallas goal, we talked about kind of the misplay there. He just seems a little off.
He does. Just speaking of the defensive pairings and everything, Rebecca, what do we think about the later game D pairs?
Because it's what were. Remind me what they were again.
So
did they go What did they go with?
Yeah, I mean Montour played forever at the end, so I
I
don't
was
know
like, it was
if you
Montour and
just mean
everybody, it felt like.
yes, yeah. So I don't know if you specifically mean that, Rebecca, or if it was just kind of the bouncing around of, is it Mahura Borgen versus Mahura Larson?
Right. Yeah, we did get actually a fair amount of Mahura Larson at
We
five
did,
on five.
yes,
Like that was the second most common D pair at five on
right,
five. And I
and
mean, their numbers were excellent. Shot at 15 to 5 shot attempts in their favor. 9 to 2 unblocked shot attempts, 82% of expected goals. That's pretty good.
Right. No, and I thought it matched, like, that synced up eye test wise. Like I felt like once that was kind of settled and that was the direction they were going in, I felt like that was the better look with Lars, was to have Mahura there, because like he's a little bit more experienced at the NHL level, even if he hasn't necessarily gotten in a ton of games all of the seasons he's been at the NHL level. He's at least been on NHL rosters. He's been around NHL defensemen. He's worked with them through practices and training camps and all of that kind of stuff, gone on deep playoff runs with them before. And I felt like that experience with a another veteran in Adam Larson versus when Mahura was, out there with Borgen, it just felt like they were able to just kind of play like vet savvy. I'm just going to cover this. I'm going to kind of cover this. There's that a little bit of that unspoken understanding between them that I feel like didn't really exist when Mahura was with Borgen.
And I wonder if they go to that a little bit next game too. I mean, assuming Dunn,
Assuming Dunn's
isn't
out.
ready. Yeah, I don't know. After watching the Dunn thing back again, I'm worried that it's, especially knowing it's like upper body, because you were saying, yeah, maybe he landed on his foot or whatever. It just looked like something in that chest collarbone area. I don't know.
Shoulder or collarbone are the two things to worry about looking at it for sure. I would probably go in this direction. I would run the Alexiak Montour pairing because they feel like they're getting stronger every game that they play. The chemistry is being built, the understandings, how they're going to handle the different situations. That feels like it's getting better. I would probably go ahead and roll that out there and use that a lot in the next game if Vince Dunn's not going to be there. And then, yeah, I'd have Mahura Larson out there. I just still feel like, right, we just talked about Riker Evans and his slow start. I feel like Will Borgen is also just, you know, this bottom pairing guy. And I feel like Mahura playing with a Larson and them kind of being able to sync up the way they did tonight, I think you can give them top 4 minutes together.
Yeah, and that's what they would be. They'd be a second D pair. It doesn't have to be your top D pair. Alexiak Montour can play a ton of minutes, and you just keep their minutes manageable.
Yeah, yeah. And Sean agreeing with that a little further down in chat. Let's see. Jenna, I don't think Matty gained weight. I think they're lying about that. He still looks like last season Matty to me. Am I wrong? This is not the first person I've heard say this, RJ. He's still very thin. He's very slight. I will say any weight he added would be very lean muscle. Like it is lean muscle. He does look a little bulkier when we get to see him outside of pads. Like in the sense that, his arms are starting to have definition more so and things like that, but it's obvious that it's lean muscle.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. He is still pretty slight there, but it doesn't mean that he can't go to those areas. Yes, doesn't mean he can't drive the net. He showed that tonight, right?
Yeah.
So as long as he has the will to go there, I think he's going to be okay.
Yes, yes. Fusion Mix. I was really hoping the Kraken would get a short-handed goal. The Stars' power play has been rancid for a season and a half now. They did have some decent chances short-handed in this one, and I will say I did like the penalty kill from unit from the Kraken in this one. You hold Dallas to 0-3. I know Dallas has their own struggles on the power play, but hey, there's a lot of offensive firepower on this team, and you keep them off the board with the man advantage.
Yeah, there is. I thought the Kraken played them well. Man, Dylan, another thought I had, and it's not really Kraken related, but this Stars power play just looks so different without Joe Pavelski on it.
It really does, yes.
The whole profile, all the looks they try and set up, everything just looks completely different. And it just really looks like it's missing something. And that's something to him.
It looks a little lost. Yeah. It very much feels like they're trying to figure it out. But, as far as like looking for positives on this game, I think that is a positive. Even though they were struggling, the PK unit stepped up, had a better game than last night, where again, you had a situation where you had two players a little too passive. It results in a goal against you. I like that growth from them. Face-off percentage, again, fairly even, close to 50-50. Yes, Dallas was ahead by a little, but the Kraken over 48%. I'll take that, right? That this is growth. This is, improvement year over year. Not that last year it's very hard to improve on, but it's improvement, and I think it bears worth talking about there a little bit. Um, let's see. Mason talking about like players that uh, go to the let's see here. Folks, Sean. Folks, this team needs a guy that they know can go out and get a goal. Um, and then Mason saying Canner is that guy, and I would agree with that. Like Jared McCann is as close to that guy as the Kraken have, and there are plenty of times where he has been that guy. Whether it was like last night, like Mason brings up, or like that Detroit game early last season, where again is like McCann comes in and makes that big play. I feel like he is a guy who can finish on those opportunities, and I'd maybe agree with James a little bit in that he has a great shot, but he's not necessarily a playmaker who can go out and create the situation on his own. I would say
You
that's
need
the
somebody else,
distinction.
yeah, to open up that space for him. And the true stars in the NHL kind of have both. And we see that with like a Kirill Kaprizov, who we just had the chance to see last night, right? Can create the space for himself and also has a wicked shot where he can score and that finishing ability. McCann, I think, is a little step below a player like that. But still, if you put him in the right spot, like we saw last night with that one-timer, he has one of the best finishes in the league.
And he had a good opportunity too. I think it was Striatic earlier in chat. It was kind of talking about how just Dallas was playing defense so tight that after he had that good look he had with about 9 minutes left, it felt like, okay, Dallas is going to be able to kind of close this one out. But it does go to show like he did have a good look there. He feels dangerous whenever he is out there on the ice. And I do really like the pairing of him with Eberle and Shane Wright. I do feel like that line is able to generate more than the other ones. Although the fourth line, RJ, is really kind of out there flying around and playing really good hockey, low key these last couple games.
Right. I think you take just this weekend as a whole, the fourth line might have been the Kraken's best line, like overall. And I know they're probably getting some easier matchups, but man, they were eating in those matchups and just looking so much faster, so much more physical than their opposition. It really stood out. It was the first time in a while that I've kind of felt that about the fourth line, really just dating back to year 2, right? It's a different look for the fourth line, but it just feels like that much of a mismatch.
Right. And I think that's it's good. And I thought it was really weird when Edzo brought it up on the broadcast where he was talking about how like it's late, you got to shorten up the bench, you got to go with just your top 9, and then the very next stoppage, he's like, wow, we haven't seen Ty Cartier out there in a little while. And it was just kind of like, well, that's what you just talked about, right? Like that is Dan shortening things up. He's not playing his fourth line, but then it speaks to maybe some of the issue of, look, what is the fourth line, right? If that line is playing better, then it should be out there. And Ty Cartier, he the one thing he brings, right? Obviously, he got the goal yesterday, but the one thing he brings, and I do feel like Tanev's done a good job of bringing it so far this season as well, is consistent effort, right? Like each and every shift, you know exactly what you're going to get out of those two guys. And I think in a game like tonight, where it's on the second half of the back-to-back, and we've kind of talked about the at times lackluster performance of the team, there was something to be said for that shouldn't be labeled the fourth line.
Yeah, and given how this roster shakes out, right? I mean, it's been the fourth line by ice time, but you look at how many goals the Kraken scored so far this season, 6, and I mean they were a part of one of those and a key one of those goals. So like, they're not contributing a ton less than anybody else.
Yeah, they actually got about half a minute more than the Stevenson line, it looks like.
Oh, really?
If Muddy Puck is correct on that. Like
Okay, at 5-on-5, yeah.
Yes, at 5-on-5. So
Stevenson must have gotten a ton of special teams time.
I mean, he
'Cause
does.
He does. I mean, he led the Kraken
Again,
forwards
it's
in
the
ice
Wenberg
time.
effect, right? Like
Yes.
he's out there for like every special teams opportunity and any like certain big face off or whatever, you send him out there.
And Bryce with the comment here, Edzo just thinks the physical bench is too long. You literally need to shorten
the bench. Yes, I wouldn't put it past him. So, but I did think like it. This is something that we had talked about, I think, a little bit yesterday and after the first game, which is, people have brought up, right? Like we're still seeing that kind of rolling continual 4 lines instead of like a more dedicated top 6 or top 9. And it's just because, look, one, you are that kind of deep and you don't have necessarily one line that is separating itself from the others. And 2, your fourth line is are, maybe been your second best line so far this year. So you don't necessarily want to cut back on it too much.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I could see is also if Dallas shortens their bench or whatever, and you're not confident that they can win the harder matchups, but like give them a try.
Yes, yes. Andrew, can you shed any light on how this offensive scheme looks different than Hackstall? Newer to hockey and don't know the nuances, but man, it feels like we still have the exact same offensive issues. I would say tonight, maybe some of those offensive issues came back in the sense that you don't have players going to the net front and trying to kind of grind and get some of those dirtier goals. But if you look at the game yesterday, you did have those opportunities, right? Jordan Eberle is going there and he's grinding away. And you're seeing, especially with the Shane Wright line, you'll see both Eberle and Shane Wright a lot of times, just like on that first Eberle goal yesterday. They're both going to be in that area. Like I said, if you watch the Yanni Gord line, Brandon Tanev is going to make sure that he's going net front. This scheme puts a lot more emphasis on moving screens in front of the goaltender. You'll notice a lot of the times if they are taking point shots, they're wanting to get some sort of moving screen in front of the goaltender there. They're not necessarily going to park somebody net front and just have them kind of be a permanent screener on the goalie, but they do want somebody kind of coming through low slot-ish, a little bit lower in the zone, and kind of get that moving screen on shots from there. They emphasize tipping the puck in those situations as well. They run a lot of drills for that, and we've seen that throughout these first 3 games. And I would also say they really want, and this is more so on the power play, but it is also at 5-on-5. They want to create chances kind of net front or net side on the back door. So looking to generate more passes that are kind of cross crease. Think about the first Dallas goal tonight. The Kraken have been looking for that setup and those opportunities, but also there was one instance where Shane Wright was behind the net in the third period and he makes the pass out to Jordan Eberle, and Jordan Eberle was net front there in that low slot area right in front of the goaltender. And he was his stick kind of got taken away, so he wasn't totally able to get the shot off there. But that's another look that this team wants to kind of create, is they want to utilize behind the net. If you have time there, look to the net front, see if you can set somebody up coming in for a good opportunity.
Yeah, and sorry if you already alluded to this too, but the plays of getting the puck from the corner into the slot really quick or into the face-off circles really quick. You saw it on the Karche goal in the last game, and there were a few times in this game too where there's a puck battle in the corner, and you saw, I forget who it was, but Tolvanen was with him, and Tolvanen was there right there in that spot where Karche shot from yesterday, stick cocked, ready to go. And the puck battle, didn't go in the Kraken's favor. They weren't able to get the puck to him, but you could see the guys ready to go and trying to generate those chances.
Yes, I mean,
that's not a look Hackstall ever looked for.
No. A lot of it is just emphasizing putting players in scoring areas, looking to generate higher percentage shots rather than just kind of cycling the puck and continually making a read and waiting for somebody to be open somewhere. It's no, if you don't have the puck, go to an area that's going to be a high quality chance, and then the puck carrier is going to find a way to get you the puck. Like is what I would say the difference is. Instead of players having to make reads, it's more of like, no, just go to a high percentage area and take your chance.
Yeah, no, I think yes.
Yeah. It's to like overly simplify it. That's kind of like the mentality shift there. Let's see, Dave, just remember, everyone, it's our 3rd game of the season. It still stinks, but just try to remain patient. I mean, that's certainly what what Dan Bilesma, as coach, has been saying. And this is another thing that I want to talk about with the Kraken Hockey Network here. Now that we've gotten 2 regular season games from them, RJ, the other thing that we've gotten 2 of is 2 assistant coach interviews.
That's awesome.
In between periods, which is like mind blown. I absolutely love this. And yes, the coaches aren't going to be like giving away the game plan and what adjustments they're going to be working on during that intermission. Why would they? But just the fact that they are speaking, we're getting them in front of the camera, we're getting to hear from them. I think that that's a big deal. And a lot of the stuff that they've been talking about, whether it was Dave Lowry yesterday, Bob Woods today, it kind of echoes some of that of like, well, look, we're working on this, and we got to see some of those chances come through.
Right. And I love those interviews. Like, first of all, because it also gives you just a sense of where the coaching staff's head is at as far as how well they're executing what they're trying to do. I really hope those continue. I think they will. I think they're going to see the feedback on that too.
Yes. Yes. So
And oh my goodness.
I know. Dave with another huge super chat. Really appreciate that, Dave. We have a ton of season to go, folks. Dylan, RJ, y'all are amazing. We needed more net front presence. Disco Dan will drill it into our players' heads. Love y'all. Love you too, Dave. Thank you very much for the big super chat after all the big super chats yesterday. And yes, I mean, a lot of conversation in chat, RJ, about needing the kind of more net front presence. I think they're getting it at times. It needs to be a little bit more consistent and have that. Like I said, they are trying to get guys into those areas. Dallas did a much better job defending that than Minnesota did yesterday. They have to figure out a way, RJ, of adjusting when you're playing a team like Dallas that knows you want to do this and they're taking it away, or St. Louis in the third period of game one, where they see that you're doing this, they make the adjustment for the final frame, and then you don't really have that plan B to go to. It does seem like, I know Dan is preaching the 20 games of patience and all of that kind of stuff. It does kind of feel like, okay, maybe before the 20 games, you're going to need to start having some sort of alternate strategy that you can pull out when a team takes away what you want to be doing.
Definitely. And I think through 3 games, especially when you have that road trip like this to more or less start the season, I think it's reasonable to not have something fully formed there. But yes, it's something you want to generate quickly, right? Because teams watch tape, they're going to be able to take away certain things. I do think the net front presence, though, is kind of a universal thing you need to have however you're playing. It's just about finding different ways to get pucks and players to the net, aside from kind of the 1 or 2 approaches that you've taken so far. But still, it's that will to go to those areas. And that's what I was talking about, like with the Berkey thing that Edzo pointed out in the broadcast, right? It's having the will, or Matty Beniers driving the net. It's the will to do that. And I think, as Dave says, Disco Dan's going to drill it into the players' heads. Like
Yes,
really wasn't there last season. I just don't think the Hackstall staff really had any desire to drill it in the players' heads, but that's something that Dan is going to emphasize. It just takes time to build those habits.
Yes, it does. And, as Allison Lucan said during the first intermission too, it's not as easy as it sounds, but there's a difference of you're trying to do it and you're not quite getting it done versus choosing to do it. And it's still more of an issue of not enough guys choosing to do it rather than guys are trying and they're just having a hard time. Right. Like it's just they're failing at it. It's more so that they're just not even kind of getting it going. And that would be something. So let's see. Anthony, I know expected goals aren't everything, but Grubauer was plus 0.75 today and Joey was minus 1.12 yesterday. I get the timely aspects, but if Grubauer got the offense Joey did yesterday, he probably wins today. Again, it's so tough, and it's certainly tough this early in a season with such a small sample size.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yes, if the Kraken score 5 goals in this game, they are going to win it for sure. But it's just it's got a different profile of game. The Stars are a different team. They play a different way, and a win had to look different than it would against Minnesota.
Right. Again, it's that kind of against an underdog. If you are the underdog, you need a big goal saved above expected day, right? Like that's how underdogs win in the NHL generally, is you have a goalie that comes in and saves 1.5 or 2 goals above expected, and then you walk out of there with 2 points and everybody goes, dang, that goalie really stepped up and helped out his team, right? Like that's generally what ends up happening, I feel like.
Yeah, and I will say Grubauer, of the 2 games, he certainly got the tougher assignment. Like there's no question about that. He got the tougher game of the 2.
Right, which I think we can read into the way that he both started opening day at home and the fact that he got this game. I don't know about their career splits. It wasn't really the right vibe for me to try to ask Dan before they left for the road trip, like how he makes a call when it comes to back-to-backs, if he goes based off of career splits, if he just kind of goes by gut feel, whatever he decides to go with. But it feels like they're signaling Grubauer is their guy, at least for the early part of the season.
Yeah, I think so. And we had that question over training camp, right? Not so much like the split, because we knew both goalies were going to play a fair amount of games. We just knew that was going to be the case. But would Joey kind of get that first priority nod, given Dan's familiarity with him in Coachella Valley? Would he kind of just try and run with him? And the answer, at least so far, is no. They're both going to get their chances.
Yes. Sean, Dallas is the best team in hockey. Can we please acknowledge that they are just a different level than the Kraken? They are. Like they absolutely are.
Yeah.
I
Let's
will
acknowledge that. Yes.
I will acknowledge that every day. It's just that, I feel like the Kraken, they were doing some things that were able to kind of bring them down to the Kraken's level. I wouldn't say the Kraken in this one played up to the Stars level, but it did feel like for most of the game they were kind of able to drag the Stars down to their level.
Right. And that kind of has to be the plan, like as we've talked about. And I understand if I've kind of sounded negative throughout the course of this about whether it's the Grubauer stuff or the mistakes and how all that happened. But really, I guess the reason behind that isolated negativity is all the positivity of how well the Kraken played to put themselves in a position where
Right.
they were within arm's reach, right? They could go and steal a game. And that's where I feel like it was a lost opportunity, but they created that opportunity, to be lost.
Yeah, yes, it comes from that
If that makes
place
sense.
of what could have been,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Where if
No,
if they
I
had
get
gone
it.
out and just played a bad game, I'm not saying this at all because they probably lose like 4 or 5 to nothing, and it's not even
Yeah,
close.
yeah, no, I'm there with you. Coop, what are you guys seeing positive from Jaden Schwartz these days? I feel like I haven't noticed him positively since that hot power play streak he had before getting hurt again, like the first half of last year. I think he's still kind of doing that. The power play looks don't emphasize or don't need him quite as much in the same ways as they did previously. And what we're seeing a lot of is whoever is net front and whoever's in the bumper kind of switch off because there's so much more of an emphasis on player movement in this power play that you're seeing a lot of that bumper role and the net front net side player role switch off because they're trying to confuse the defense, pull defenders, kind of suck them back in or pull them away to create a chance for whoever's going into the bumper role, whatever it may be. You're seeing that kind of player movement. So they're kind of trading spots there a little bit. So he's not maybe as noticeable as somebody who's directly just trying to screen the goaltender or get a tip the way he was, say, in the first half of last year, because that role has changed. And so it doesn't totally fit his skill set as much, I feel like, RJ. Otherwise, we're talking about players that need to go net front, having a more consistent net front presence, players to go to the interior in the offensive zone, RJ. And I feel like Jaden Schwartz still kind of does that, but there hasn't been that same level of energy or juice, as Dan would probably put it, from him as we've seen from him in years past.
Right. I think we're seeing less offensively from him, but if I'm talking about positives from Jaden Schwartz, I'd say the 200-foot game. We've talked a lot about defensive breakdowns and missed assignments and things like that over this weekend. And I don't think Jaden Schwartz's name has really come up at all in those conversations. I think he's playing really solid in the D zone and playing that 200-foot game. It's not going to stand out on the score sheet, but you look at his line with him, Stevenson and Bjorkstrand. That was like, I think the fourth most common line, in the game. It was his most common at 5-on-5. Shot attempts were 11-2 in their favor. Like expected goals were very low in their favor. They didn't do much on those 11 shot attempts, but they only gave up 2. And so he was part of a line that didn't really give up anything.
Right. No, and he has made some good defensive plays. And I feel like when he's with Burakovsky and Chandler Stevenson, or really even with Stevenson and Bjorkstrand, it does feel like his job on that line is not to be the person driving offense. It's very much to be the person who is helping out on the back end, right? He's, you're talking about Chandler Stevenson, whose best skill probably is his passing and his creativity. And then you're talking about him being paired with somebody else who has a very similar skill set in Andre Burakovsky, or another offensive threat in Oliver Bjorkstrand. It very much feels like Jaden Schwartz is just kind of like, go to the net front and like kind of keep the D, honest in the offensive zone, force them to have to keep their D close to home and honest. Otherwise, help out through the neutral zone, because that's not really the strong suit of Berkey, Bjorkstrand, or Stevenson.
Right. And I see the comment here from Daniel. Thought Schwartz dogged it getting back into the zone on the second goal tonight. And he was the guy that reached Johnston just a little bit after he released the shot. But in defense of Schwartz there, first of all, that's not his man. That's
It's
kind of
not his
Riker's
man at all. Yeah.
And also, if you kind of expand the screen and look at like he just barely caught on the wide angle of it. But the reason he's back there as late as he is, which is still is not even that late, is he kind of tries to interfere with the trailing guy, the third one coming in. I forget if that was Stankoven or whoever else, but he kind of gives him a little tug on the shoulder, keeps him from joining that play and making it a proper 3-on-2. It's one of those sneaky little gamesmanship type of things where, yeah, Schwartz is a little slower getting to the zone, but it's because he's slowing down the other guy, which that is his guy. And he slows him
Yes.
down, keeps him out of the play.
Yeah, no, I think Schwartz was fantastic on that play. So I'm right there with you. Zoe, if Dunn is out long term, what is the plan for call-ups? When would we know this? So I mean, is there anything to draw from the fact that like Vince Dunn was not placed on IR today, RJ?
Well, they don't need to place him on IR because they have roster spots available. All placing him on IR does
That's
is open
true.
up a roster spot. As
Yeah,
we
that's
know, the
true.
Kraken only have a 21-man roster. They've
Yes,
got room to
they've
add.
got room.
They just don't have the cap space to add. So this is what I was talking about, whether it was the Armchair GM stream or the podcast. You have $4,000 in cap space. You don't have enough money to realistically call someone up for any kind of extended amount of time. If Dunn is out for a week or two, you're going to need to move someone. This is the time where you have to do it, whether it's Tanev, somebody else. You've got to create the space. Like if Dunn is out long term, you just have to.
Right. What is the how much of if they were to waive Tanev and nobody claims him, RJ?
Yes.
How much can they free up? Because
They
it's
free
not
up
the whole
about
amount, right?
1.2 million. No,
Yeah.
it's not the whole amount.
Yeah.
Teams can bury about 1.2 million. I forget if it's 1.25, but roughly that. They can bury that in the minors. That would create more than enough flexibility to go call somebody up. So you could waive Tanev, send him down, and call somebody up.
Yeah.
Well, no,
But then it's just right, because it's just a 1-for-1. You need to be able to bring up 2 players. So I was hoping
and
that it
that's not
generated
actually
enough.
I don't know that I don't think that's enough. 1.15 it is from Viren. Thank you, Viren. So it's 1.15.
That's not
league
enough.
minimum is 775. That's not
Right.
enough for 2 players, and you need to call one up to
Yep.
replace Tanev and somebody else.
Yes.
So you'd have to make sure either he gets claimed or then now you're in a tricky situation where you might have to even add something to a deal because you're in such a desperate spot.
Right. You have
don't
no
like
leverage.
this.
I really don't like it either. Yeah, I honestly don't know because like right now, any other injury and you just don't you're just kind of done.
Right. Then you have to make a move.
Yeah. And it's
like,
just
literally before your next game, you have to make a move with another injury.
I know. And we were kind of planning on talking about this a little bit during the podcast tomorrow, but it's like, it's just such a crummy spot to be in. Because you have no flexibility at all.
Yeah.
And you've done it to yourself.
Right. And I know Sean asking here, when do we start questioning Francis? If you watch the Armchair GM stream, I'm there.
Yeah, I know. I think yes, at the very least, just from salary cap management, the time has come and gone. Like it is very fair to talk about his cap management and question it, as the Kraken have the highest on cap payroll in the league with 2 players under the maximum roster size, and this team.
and Viren actually does make a good point there though. There's an emergency exception for if you have to play under 18 if you have to play short a game.
Yes.
And then you can do the emergency recall. So they might just be able to do emergency recalls, with a 20-minute. It's no way to operate.
It's not, yes, like you can operate that way, but like you can't really, like you just can't. That's the problem with this is like, I just don't know I just don't know that there's anything you can do other than just legit trying to move all of Tanev's contract.
Yeah. I think
because that's
or you could retain
players.
You can retain $1 million. You can retain even 1.5 and be okay. Probably, you can retain some money and still move him, but that's, you just have to try and do something like that. Or is, someone was pointing out, Kylie was saying, Gord, that's another option. I'd hate to still move him as effective as that fourth line's been. And if you don't have to, but he would be in more demand. I will say that. I agree with Kylie on that. And then Coop, I skipped the Armchair GM stream just because I knew it was going to stress me out. That good instincts there. If that was your worry, it's probably best to skip it.
Yes. And I'm sure this conversation hasn't helped. So sorry about that.
Sorry, Coop.
Yes. But yeah, no, it is a really tough spot, and they're just kind of stuck with it right now, unfortunately. Let's see. The forwards just need to be better from Brooke. Like, I mean, there's an element of yes, at some point somebody's got to do the scoring, RJ. Like this is
Yeah.
still a team that should be getting depth scoring, but it all too often feels like it's an all or nothing day for this team instead of kind of what we saw season 2. And I know the shooting percentages were crazy and all of that kind of stuff. But like season 2, what kind of made season 2 work was you were rolling 4 lines, but on any given night, 2 of those lines were going to show up and contribute a goal for you. And that was enough with your goaltending tandem. I feel like that would be a similar case this year. Just so far, it feels like either all 4 lines are showing up or nobody's showing up.
Right. Now, Dylan, sorry if this feels like repetitive or if you've talked about something close enough to this, but I do have a question for you just because it is bugging me a little bit. Are you worried at all about Chandler Stevenson just from an offensive production standpoint? I know we talked about the other things he does.
Yes.
But still, he's played about 60 minutes now, basically 20 minutes a game, 3 games.
Yeah.
2 total shots on goal.
Right.
And I know he's more of a distributor, but the production is worrying me a little bit.
I mean, is it
too early?
Well, no, I'm going to ask a different question to you, which is it that surprising?
No, it's not surprising.
Were we expect? I know
yeah.
you and I were not expecting it, like really much. So,
yeah, no, I mean, I wasn't. Look, history says he's not going to be a 50-point player, but
right.
how much lower is it going to be? I don't know. I would have expected just a little bit more by now, and it's worrying me because they're going to need more. They're basically betting on him at least being a 50-point player. And I just don't see the early returns that might lead to that.
No, he is playing like I talked about yesterday, right? He's playing the best version of himself. Like he's playing better than I thought he would coming in right away. It's just that the things he does do not directly, result in offense, like going on the board, numbers being put up on the board, right? It's things like he knows how to create on the fly, which is something the Kraken just kind of lacked. He's not like a wizard at it. He's not one of the top guys in the league at doing so. It's just that he's better than what the Kraken had at it. He knows how to pull defenders out of position. That's great if you have a player like Mark Stone that really knows how to exploit that. Kraken, they don't really have anybody that seems to play heads up enough to exploit that. I could see Bjorkstrand maybe being that guy, but I just still don't know that it would even happen all that consistently, right? But like these are the offensive things that Chandler Stevenson does well, and what he did well in Vegas, right? It wasn't that he was putting up points in Vegas; it's that he was creating opportunities for the good players to step up and give them an easier time to step up. It's just, and I do feel like he is doing that here. It's just that the Kraken don't have players that have stepped up.
No, I think that makes sense. And I'm seeing actually really good conversation from everybody here at the bottom of chat, kind of having that discussion about Stevenson and what they see. Bryce pointing out, like historically, even he's barely a shot on goal per game player. Basically, at best, he averages about 2 shots per game or so. So it's not, he's generated offense without getting a ton of shots himself. So like that alone shouldn't be worrying. But I know that like other people were saying, who was it?
Well, I was going to say, just to throw in real quick, but like things like, oh, we need more net front offense. That's not Chandler Stevenson, right? Like that was the big thing that concerned me with the signing. If you go back to January 1st in the podcast that we talked about and we recorded, was I brought up, I think it was the Micah Blake McCurdy, zone stuff. And it's just like a barren wasteland of net front offense for Chandler Stevenson, and then a whole bunch of terrible stuff net front defensively because he's not a great guy coming deep into the zone either, right? And so, like, again, if that's what this team needs is more net front offense, Chandler Stevenson, again, is not going to be a guy that's going to fix that, right? Like, that is just so not his game at all.
Yeah, as Fusion Mix says, without Stone, Stevenson is a facilitator without a trigger man. And that's kind of what he looks like right now.
Yeah, that's very much what I feel like. Alan, for what it was, I think we played okay against Dallas, but if we're being honest, no team really plays good against Dallas. Dallas plays good against everyone else. I do like that here as we're probably close to starting to wrap this up. Shannon, thank you for educating us and for hosting the post-game gatherings. You're both wonderful. Scratches for Afra. Definitely give those to her in just a sec, Shannon, for sure. I mean, we can do like a quick last call down at the bottom here. And Jenna pointed out Hayden gets net front. I mean, I thought Hayden had a good camp. Ben Myers, RJ, kind of playing with the speed. He'd go net front, right? A lot of the guys that played for Dan in Coachella Valley would go net front. Ryan Winterton would go net front, right? Like that was the style that this team played with in Coachella Valley. And that's partly why I'm like, I feel like it might be coming for this team, that kind of net front presence and everything, because that's what they did in Coachella Valley and what they were so successful with. And you're seeing it from Shane Wright, a player who played for him. It's just, there's just no space. There's no money to call anybody up and work them into the lineup, even rotationally. There's no everyday role for that. Like, I feel like that's still some of this problem.
Right. Well, talking about Hayden and Myers, that is a reason I'm optimistic that when they do make a move, because they'll need to make a move, the guys you can call up can help, can go to the net like you need, and do all that stuff that you want to see. So, like, I think you can make a move. You're going to be all right. If anything, it makes me actually optimistic a little bit.
Yeah.
And then Zoe asking a good question here that I did want to get to. What does day to day mean for Dan? Referring to the Vince Dunn injury, says he's day to day with an upper body injury. She says, I swore Hat called Dunn's injury last season day to day. He did. It was day to day for months.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, same thing. That doesn't really, I think, change under Dan. Day to day can mean I will find out, I guess, because basically coaches have different levels of like being forthcoming about the injury stuff, right?
Yes.
You don't get a lot of transparency in the NHL, but there are kind of levels of it. I don't know how Dan was in Coachella Valley because we weren't ever in a position to like be asking about injuries and following that kind of stuff, right? So we'll have to kind of find out, but basically day to day, yeah, it can mean anything.
Right. It basically means he's not hurt seriously enough that there's going to be like a surgery and a long rehab process and everything that would facilitate like an LTIR situation, or even an IR situation if they needed the roster space. So just to kind of any injury that is like not severely serious is just day to day. Because at any given time, it'll just kind of clear up and work its way out, and they're good to go.
The main thing to look for is basically when he starts skating again. If he comes back to practice, if he's there, that's when the next step in ramping up. But if you don't see him on the ice, then it's a little bit longer of a term thing. And of course, we'll monitor that.
Right. I was going to say, I believe they have a practice tomorrow in Nashville. Yep. So, we'll see if he's there. It wouldn't surprise me, though, if they, just kind of played it safe. Even if he was maybe capable of coming back, they play it safe and we don't see him again until they return home. Byron, I remember you saying at one point that Shane looked like the line mate Berkey had been waiting for. Wonder if that would be worth trying. I do think that would be worth trying, right? Like that was kind of what I was envisioning with Eberle, although the roles have been reversed so far through the first two games that they've played together, which was I wanted a player who Shane could play on the inside, kind of streak down the slot the way he wants, and you have a player who can get him the puck in that spot, right? Eberle's really good at passing from the corner or from behind the net. Berkey's really good from passing from the corner. I wanted a player with Shane that could make those passes and make those plays. Now, what we've seen these last two games when Shane has been paired with Jordan Eberle, RJ, is that it's been the opposite. Shane has been going and grinding and digging the puck out of the corner and going behind the net. And then Jordan Eberle's going net front and Shane's feeding him with passes. So in that sense, I feel like it's kind of working with Eberle because Eberle does go net front and can play there and can finish in a way that, as we talked about earlier, as Edzo pointed out on the broadcast, Berkey's not necessarily going to do those things. But if you do have, if let's say you take Shane and you swap spots with Chandler Stevenson and you have Jaden Schwartz, who can be the guy who goes and digs out the puck, or you have Ty Cartier out there, or you have Eli Tolvanen, right, who can go out there and dig out the pucks. This is why I wanted him with Tolvanen all along, was Shane inherently wants to play physical. He wants to go to those areas of the ice. He wants to get the puck. Like you can tell that about him. But on this team, Shane, because he is a guy who can finish, and there's just so few finishers on this team, he needs to be one of the guys in the shooting role, right? And I think inherently he doesn't necessarily want to do that. He wants to play a more grinder style, and he wants to prove that he can physically do it. I think you need to pair him with both somebody who can dish him the puck when he gets to those areas, but also somebody who's going to go and do the hard work, because Shane naturally tends to want to go and do the hard work himself. And really, this team can't afford for him to do that. Not because you're worried about injury, just because you need him to score goals for you. He's one of like 3 guys who could consistently probably do that for you. You need him scoring goals. And so far, he's instead wanting to do the hard work. And then he's kind of setting up Jordan Eberle through these first 2 games.
Yeah, that's all really well said. And yeah, I guess that can be the downside of kind of being good at everything, right? He can do
Yeah.
the hard work, he can shoot, but got to be in the right role based on what your teammates are.
Yes. Yes. And then I think we could go ahead and close it out with this awesome super chat here from Shannon. Thank you very, very much, Shannon. See you in Smashville. Yes, I mean that is the next game up. Get the first look at the new look Nashville Predators here, RJ. Very, very different team. Very excited for this one though. And hey, with a day's rest, the way the Kraken were able to play on the road these first 2 games, RJ, I think it should be a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like the Minnesota game yesterday, it's a game against a team that should be right there in the thick of the playoff chase with Seattle when it's all said and done at the end of the season. Those points are super big. And the thing I'm most excited about, Dylan,
Yep, there we go.
is we get to watch this game with our Terror of the Deep patrons. We get to have our ECH live commentary. I love these. It's like a highlight of my season, highlight of the month every month. We have such a good time watching the game together. So if you want to watch it along with the 2 of us for that whole Nashville Kraken game, patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey. If you want to try it out for free too, just see what it's like, check it out for free. We do have a 7-day free trial option as well. So you can sign up, see what we're all about. And I cannot wait to watch that game along with you. It's going to be a fun time. We tend to pick pretty good games for that too.
We do. We have a lot of fun and we're able to have some really good discussions during them too. I feel like as the games are going on. So very much looking forward to that and spending time with everybody. Thank you so much, Shannon, for the big super chat there. Very greatly appreciated. Thanks to everybody who was able to join us tonight and all the super chats and everything. And we'll see you all either for that game against Nashville on Tuesday, or we'll see you all right back here for post game live afterwards.